Thanks for joining back after the coffee. We will continue our Making the Future track, although I think I will be talking a little bit more about present times and what is happening right now. And the topic will be IoT at scale, and I will try to explain what do I mean by that. But the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about the title is actually this cartoon. And in the previous session, I was sitting in one of the back rows, and I know that you don't see really well back from there what is happening here on the screen. So if you want to move a little bit closer, it will be certainly helpful. But this is a cartoon that was put by one of my colleagues. And if you can read, the lady staying on the scale is saying, oops, it seems that scale is going to close the fridge for us. But today I will be talking about slightly different kind of scale once we are talking about IoT. Unfortunately, I'm working in one German big company, and I cannot talk to you without showing this slide, and I cannot continue until you read and understand what it says. And just to help you, basically it says that based on whatever I'm saying here, you cannot, it should not, and it cannot influence any buying decision from you. Not that I would expect that you would be buying SAP software right now, but still I have to show this. Okay. Just a few words about myself. My name is Vitaliy Rudnytskiy. The Twitter handle is Sigismundovich. Anyone knows what it means? So probably no one here else from Eastern Europe, because these guys would immediately know what it really means. But basically, Sigismundovich means the son of Sigismund. Sigismund was my father. And when I created this Twitter handle, I didn't really know kind of like what are the good rules to create the Twitter handle, so no one can really understand and remember this one. I spent about 15 years in being a technology consultant, so basically flying to customers on different projects, and my background is more in analytics, in data processing, data management. But today I'm working at SAP in a really cool team that is responsible for SAP Developer Center, and I am based in Wrocław, Poland. Anyone knows where Wrocław is? Yeah. Anyone know where Poland is? Good. Yeah, so just to help you, Wrocław is in the southern western corner. If I will say that this is Breslau, then probably more people will immediately know where it is. And if you didn't hear about Wrocław before, then we did really bad thing, doing really bad thing, because this year Wrocław is European capital of culture. And I know that we are here at the Geek conference, and maybe not everyone is interested in the culture, but still, I did my job to explain to you what Wrocław is. Okay, let us move on. So, internet is connecting. Who of you remember the very beginnings of the web pages? Cool. So on this side, we have people who were born before 1980, and I assume on this side we have people who came here from the local university. I was amazed when I saw the web page for the very first time. You know, the concept that you don't have a book where you just linearly going through the text, but you can actually jump back and forth, it was something unbelievable for me. But then Internet of Context changed into Internet of People. Who of you do not use any social media? Huh? That's interesting, because usually there are at least one or two people who are saying that just like they do not expose themselves to the Internet. So Internet started connecting people, but still there are only, what, around 6 billion people, 7 billion people in the world. So let's say this Internet is still somewhat limited, but then we are coming to much, much bigger picture, Internet of Things. And what the hell, why would SAP be interested in Internet of Things? So last night we had a very nice dinner for speakers. How many of you are speakers here? Okay. But I don't recognize any face that would stay till the very end as I did. So if I will screw my sentences, please forgive. Besides Internet of Things, Internet of Beer is quite interesting for me as well. But everyone I was talking to yesterday was saying, so where did you come from? SAP. What are you going to talk? IoT. What does SAP have in common with IoT? Well, actually, if you look at this picture, it says that the global business trade will be around 65 trillion by 2020. And actually, the whole networked economy is going to generate 90 terabytes of dollars, let's put it this way. And if you know SAP, then you know where money, we are as well. So we cannot just sit aside and just watch at something that is happening in front of our eyes that has some dollars attached to that. Luckily, I'm not in the sales. I'm in technology, so I have much more fun from doing this than our poor guys who are trying to sell this. I know that today, later during this track, we will have someone discussing this Gartner curve and information that IoT is actually at the very top of the inflated expectations right now. So I'm not going to steal that show, but it means that, the fact that we have this whole track on making the future, which is basically about Internet of Things, is just another proof to the popularity of this topic. But as well, I think we should expect already some people starting sliding down and getting more reasonable view on that. I found this statement quite nice, fitting into what I would expect is going to happen. So you cannot spell idiot today without having IoT in that. And in this case, actually, Guy was discussing, and Boris, sorry, I didn't change this slide, that he just spent $200 on buying some smart bulbs, and I know that he used this example before. No personal insult here is expected, but basically, the guy spent $200 to buy 3 bulbs for his house. And then he realized that maybe it is not the smartest purchase that he had made in his life. So there are some people who already started realizing this. But the other thing, once we are talking about being at the top of these inflated expectations, is that some other people, like James Gosling, anyone recognizes this name? Yeah, so the guy who supposedly is the father of Java. We had IoT at Scale conference in Palo Alto in California 2 years back, organized by SAP. And this guy, he had a keynote, and he said, just like, I feel I've been doing Internet of Things for a decade, it's just that I didn't know that was the name for that. Right? So there are certainly people who have been doing this, and actually I put the name, a link to his YouTube talk at that conference, so these materials will be available for you. I certainly recommend you to watch this, because the thing that, do you know what James is doing these days? Liquid robotics. So basically, he has this robotics, floating in the ocean, all connected. So kind of Internet of Things as well. Sorry for this Skype for Business, but it means that Internet popped up, and every time Internet is happening to work here at the conference, I'm getting this message. So, but kind of like before Internet of Things, have you heard about the real-time awareness? It is becoming extremely popular these days, again, just because of the things that are called iBeacons. But basically, if you look at this, SAP and Frankfurt Airport has done this in 2005, right? So this is something that has existed already before, or smart items. So here is the slides from smart items research that one of our colleagues has done in 2004. So again, this is not a new thing, but what is different today with the IoT? There are quite a few things, and they are all interconnected. But I believe that one of the most important ones is how much costs dropped for Internet of Things, or for the things that can actually do the computing. So one thing that I kind of like is this one. This is called Tessel. Anyone used Tessel before? This is not Raspberry Pi, just to answer the question. This is not Arduino. This is Tessel. This is a quite interesting startup from Silicon Valley, and what they've done with this is that they've done something that is extremely easy for web developers, because basically this stuff is running Node.js, and then it comes with the whole bunch of different sensors. Like, for example, here is the sensor for temperature, and I actually expected that we will be measuring temperature here in the room, which we are not doing for the reason that I will explain later on. The other sensor can be, for example, camera. So it's really cool, just like, it is plug and play. You do the soft in Node.js, you just deploy to this. It has Wi-Fi built in, and then, it can send you some information about what is happening. But these guys, like, just this little thing cost $70. And they came up with this about 3 years ago. If you were following news, then you know that Raspberry Pi already selling things which are, how expensive? $5, yeah? So once we are talking about the cost, it's really incredible how quickly this stuff is falling. So for example, anyone knows what this is? So this is, who of you is driving a car? Okay. Yeah, I heard that in Linz you don't really need a car just because the city is so huge and there is quite a good public transportation in here. But should you ever buy a car and drive a car, right now every car has a port that is called OBD2 and allows you to plug dongle like this. And then you will get much more information about your car than you can have just from the dashboard of your car, right? And the reason I'm showing this is that I bought this in Poland for something like 150 Polish zlotys, which is around, let's say, 40 euros. And then I went to the US, I showed this to my colleagues, and they said, yeah, I bought the same. It was $20 here in the US. And I thought, yeah, in Poland we like to overpay. But it just shows again, how quickly these prices are dropping, just as quickly as my slides are scrolling without me asking them. So one thing is cost. Another one is, this whole technology development. The third one, let's say, is this uniform access, right? So there are more and more standards around IoT, be this protocols or be this, for example, this standardized port. As I mentioned, for example, right now, almost every single car has the same port that allows you to connect different dongles from different vendors, and then you might have different apps on your phones. But kind of like the port is the same and is unified. Anyone heard about the fog computing? Cool. So the fog computing, anyone heard about the cloud computing? Yeah. So the cloud computing is obviously the processing that is happening over there in the cloud. The fog computing is the computing that is actually happening on the device, right? So one thing, for example, that I wanted to show you, unfortunately it didn't work out, is, as I mentioned, I can take a picture with this camera, but before I can upload this picture to the cloud, or at least the cloud that I'm using, I need to convert this picture from some Node.js binary format to another one, and this computing has to happen here. Yeah. So, for example, any data processing that is happening on device, of, like, for example, this format changing for the picture is something that is referred to as a fog computing. Okay. Let us hack IoT. So, what are two things that we need for Internet of Things? Yeah, so we've got half of the answer from the older auditorium here. They know that you need internet for the Internet of Things, which actually kind of like gives us the answer what is the second thing that we need for Internet of Things. things. Yeah, without internet and without things, there would be no Internet of Things. And actually, you can see that, oh, you don't see. So let us do this deconstruction. So one, we need things. And what is cool about things, besides the whole, processing, as we discussed, are really sensors. What is the most popular Internet of Things thing with sensors right now? Exactly, smartphone, right? I've been going to the conference in Poland that is called Mobile Trends for quite a while, and I remember when I first went there about 3 or 4 years ago, it was one of these aha moments when the guy was explaining what is the difference, let's say, between the applications on the phone and applications on the computer, is that basically you have lots of sensors built into this. Yeah? So obviously one sensor can be the light sensor, another one can be GPS, your location, the other one can be the gyroscope, and so on and so forth, right? So we have already quite many things thanks to this one. The other thing, as we mentioned, is actually internet. But once we are talking about internet at scale, like, in company like SAP, then it is not just enough to have my mobile phone connected to the internet. We need somehow to collect and to process this data. So in industrial case, there is actually the third thing that is required, which is some platform. And I will get to this platform a little bit later as well. So let's say I was lying. For Internet of Things at the industrial scale, we need 3 things. Yeah? We need things, we need internet, and we need the platform. Younger group. Anyone recognize this picture? Yeah? Do you remember exactly the sentence that was kind of like said at this moment? I feel the need for speed. And I got an excellent example today from one guy in the auditorium who really needed the speed. Those of you who attended previous session would immediately recognize Boris. And actually, right now we are at the technology conference, and let's put it straight, internet sucks here, right? And believe me, this is not the first technology conference where internet sucks, and I assume this is not the last one. And you know where internet sucks the most among all the technology conferences? At the Mobile World Conference in Barcelona. It's just impossible, not just to connect an internet there, but even to make your access point working. But nevertheless, these guys in suits are gathering there just to discuss how wonderful world we are living at. So, as you see, let's say one of the issues in Internet of Things is actually internet itself. And this internet is coming with quite many different issues. This is quite interesting article that recently happened in Wired. In the US, they just ran out of the IP version for address spaces. Yeah? No one expected probably it to happen that quickly once this protocol was invented. Luckily, we are coming already with IP version 6, which actually will allow us to have IP version 4 at every single star in the known universe. So let's hope that this one will be enough. So let's say with internet, we have some issues, but hopefully we are making progress. It is going to get better. The other thing are actually all these 75 billion things that are expected to be here in 2020. And what are we going to do with these things? We are going to love these things. Privacy concerns put aside. Issues put aside. We, as developers, are going to love these things. Because these things are happening quite a lot right now in the consumer business, and I think Boris was discussing quite a lot different examples what is happening in consumer business. But there is quite a lot happening in this area, in the, let's say, industrial area, in the regular business, And we will be giving some, or I will be giving some examples in a minute as well. I've been discussing, this hardware platform. There are obviously much more available. Anyone owning Raspberry Pi at home already? Okay, I thought only older generation, and then I was curious what younger generation has. Raspberry Pi, Arduinos, BeagleBone Blacks. If you don't like fancy marketing names, you can go with ESP8266, almost like BB8. So there is quite a lot of stuff available, and the only reason why I put it in this slide is that later on, if you just want to actually make a decision which one you would like to have, you will have the overview of each of them here in the slide deck. I'm not going to discuss those in details, but just like, who of you is dealing with IoT devices at work? Yeah, all speakers, right? At SAP, surprise, surprise, we put something that is called the D-Shop, and it is in the biggest developer locations. I believe in Munich, the guys have already, no? Okay. It is certainly available in Waldorf, in Palo Alto, in Bangalore, in Sofia, and in some other big developer locations, where actually we are throwing our developers all this fancy stuff, not just things like computers, but as well, even stuff like this, and Google Glasses, and so on and so forth. And the guys can just come to this lab, or we call it D-Shop, can play with this stuff, can do their private projects, and hopefully come up with some great idea what to do with that. As well, for our developers, or internal engineers, as it is sometimes referred, we are organizing as well monthly or bi-monthly meetings where they are sharing in the group what they have developed, what they 3D printed, how they connected their home, and then, showing surprised face of their spouse on the video camera when they are connecting or playing music from the office, at home. Okay, so I've been using so far interchangeably IoT as an Internet of Things, and as well some industrial references. We like to say that we are living in the Industry 4.0 era right now, and Industry 4.0 is obviously a subset, and this is a subset where, as I mentioned, money is, and this is where SAP is obviously interested because of that. Yeah. So obviously all these guys who lived at the end of 18th century, at the beginning of 20th century, in early 1970s, they didn't know that they are living in Industry 1.0, Industry 2.0, Industry 3.0, but our marketing guys have to do something creative, so they came up with the idea that right now we call this Industry 4.0. And this Industry 4.0 or IoT can be quite interesting and quite different than some of the most obvious cases we may have in our minds. So, unfortunately, I didn't do my homework. Is there any famous football club in Linz? No? So, if you want to watch the match live, you are going to Munich or you are going to Vienna? Or you still have a stadium here? Salzburg? Okay, because we can get into unnecessary fight here right now, But have you ever been to the stadium? Cool. Then if you've been to the stadium and you had a beer, you know that after 45 minutes of the first part of the game, you need to go to the restroom. And this restroom, it has to serve quite many people, actually, sometimes, up to 50,000 people. And this is, I expected, would be the size of the Linz stadium, but I understand that it is not. So these 50,000 people, at least at the biggest stadiums, they have to be served. And this is where one of SAP partners and customers, I'm not really good in pronouncing German names, Gartner, is working on. So they put disconnected devices, like for example, the paper dispenser. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 built-in sensors, right? Probably saying, what is happening with this paper, maybe what is the temperature, what is the moisture around this, and so on and so forth. And now let's say we have this paper dispenser, which we need to multiply by the number of these dispensers in restroom, number of restrooms on the stadium, number of stadiums that these guys are managing. So we are getting quite nice size of the data that they are collecting, just to make you happy during your break, during the famous game of the Linz team at the stadium. Still within the football area, so another customer of SAP is Hoffenheimen. How to pronounce it? Anyone knows? Hoffenheim. So SAP is working with these guys. So during their trainings, these guys have chips in their shoes. Goalkeeper has chips in gloves. There is a chip in the ball. And then they are collecting all this information during the training and then putting this all on the very nice dashboard. What is happening and how well they are performing and so on. And obviously, when German team won the World Championship, SAP immediately started screaming, yeah, we are working with them, and they won just because, of us supplying all the software for German national team. Why not? So then you can obviously have all the different charts, you have visualization, and so on once you're collecting this information. Okay, sorry. Another I found interesting example, once we are talking about sensors and moving parts, is the anti-collision system. So if you've ever been to a construction area, you've seen the cranes, which are picking up stuff and moving it back and forth. And it happens to happen that in the past that there are some collisions just because they are working on the very limited area, and there are a few cranes working in parallel. So another SAP partner built with us, for example, this anti-collision system, where these cranes have several sensors as well, and then it is calculated in the real time so that there is no collision, once these cranes are moving. Another example is another SAP customer, Transport of London. So I don't know if, Boris, you've seen this example before or not. If you used them to get your IoT meetup. But basically, if anyone is working with SAP, immediately will recognize the new UI. So it is true that Transport of London is working with us on IoT scenarios for them. Siemens Cloud for Industry is another huge example of the... Sorry, something is happening with my laptop. Is another huge example of leveraging actually SAP IoT platform for managing their Siemens and non-Siemens devices. Medical case from the startup that is called Early Sense. They are processing medical information that is happening. So there are more and more examples where, as I mentioned, in industry, we see examples of leveraging IoT, and then what would be the rough picture for this industrial IoT platform, as I mentioned, the third thing, right? So we have all these things which are connected, which we need to monitor and send some data or alerts. So there is a data acquisition. Remember that some things is happening as a fog computing in here on the devices, then the rest of the processing is happening in the cloud platform, where it can be used to optimize corporate operations, or being used as well for some more creative cases, creating the applications which are actually using this information, right? So in our case, and there are quite many IoT platforms already on the market. The reason why I'm mentioning our SAP platform is just to show you, some of the important components once we are talking about this. So obviously, once we are getting all this information, hopefully in the real time, if needed, or like one SMS per event, as it is happening with the vending machines, you need to store this data somewhere. So it can be Hadoop, it can be relational database like SAP HANA. So this is this data acquisition thing, because almost always this data is connected to some timestamp. Very important is understanding of the processing of the serious data. The other thing is almost all of these devices, as I mentioned, they have GPS or they know their location. So there is a need to be able to process spatial information where these guys are. Like, for example, this anti-collision cranes, as I mentioned, they need to calculate this in 3D, in 3 dimensions, where things are happening. Rules processing, obviously, if temperature is going too low, then maybe to put the heat on. If it is going up, then maybe open the window automatically, obviously, or send an alert to service guy who will come and open the window, right? So there are quite a few things that have to be built into the platform for processing this IoT data that are coming from all these devices. And in case of, let's say, our HANA Cloud platform, we have something that is called IoT Service, and it has 3 parts. And again, every single platform that is out there to serve IoT information should have the same. So one part is so-called remote device management. So this is where actually, once we are deploying 10,000 of these devices with sensors, we want to know where they are, what is happening with them, how many are out there, which one are working and which are not. The other one is message management. This is basically, receiving the data coming from these devices and being able to process this data as it is coming. So this is stream processing, or later on to do some mining on this data once this is the data at rest. And then obviously application enablement, which is basically exposing APIs, which would allow you to build applications on top of this data about the devices and about the sensor readings that you can share as well with your users and customers. So, I mean, if you want to try it out, again, I'm not here to sell you anything. You can go and try with whatever IoT platform you want. If you want to try this SAP platform, then the developer account is free. Enjoy it. But there are still, just not to live on this rosy picture, As I mentioned, we are all going to love 75 billion devices out there. There are certainly some risks and challenges related to this. And Boris mentioned some of them. I will start with the fact that there is still lots of bullshit around IoT. I mean, if you are paying $200 for 3 smart bulbs just to have 65 million colors that they can, shine in, I think there is still something wrong. Sorry, Boris, I didn't ask how much you paid for your 3 bulbs. Okay. So, yeah, as I mentioned, in Poland, we like to overpay. So finding what is real and what is not real is still kind of like the exercise that you need to do. The other thing is complexity. And believe me, it is quite fun once you have, one device that you are playing with and you can see your heart monitor or whatever. So 1 minute? 5 minutes, okay. That's all cool. But once you are deploying thousands of these devices, there is complexity that is coming into this picture. There was some great article, I believe, from one of the museums in Boston, describing their experience with deploying beacons. Everyone is familiar already with iBeacons technology, or have heard about them, right? So this is another like proximity, so-called microlocation technology. So these beacons, they are just sending signals. They are installed in one place, and then your application, for example, let's say museum, once you are coming to this beacon, application recognizes where you are because of this beacon, and then it, let's say, describes the story that is behind the painting that you are staying next to it, right? So these guys, they deployed quite many of these things, quite many of these beacons, and then they described, I don't remember if it was a blog or it was an article, you just can search for this, and it is quite an interesting reading how the rosy life of the IoT implementations on the big scale looks like, and then obviously, last but not least, privacy and security. So here's example from the FDA, the agency in the US, which is shipping warning that some of the infusion pumps that are being used, to dose drugs in hospitals, that some of the, you are all developers, so you immediately will recognize close port 20 and port 23 on these devices. Otherwise, some people can, take control over this. So, every one of us is rushing to the market. Everyone is obviously want to focus on some shiny things, how to make a nice chart or how to, serve this dose. But once it is coming to security, it is boring, right? And because it is boring, there are quite many threats like this. And then obviously this whole IoT, we need to remember that we as humans are still evolving, and these IoT devices will help us to evolve as well. I don't know if always in the positive manner, but this is how someone, have you ever tried Google Glasses before? If you would try, you would immediately understand what it really means, and if you would be using them for a while, this is probably how the next generation of our kids will look like. So evolution is continuing, and these devices are certainly going to play the important part in that. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to me. Any questions? Sure.
Say again the name of the Node.js
device? Tessel. Tessel. You can, stop by and look as well. And actually, sorry, I forgot to show one other thing that we like to play a lot right now. I don't know if you've seen this. This is so-called sensor tag from Texas Instruments. It has around 11 different sensors built in into this stuff, right? So it has obviously temperature, humidity, light, gyroscope, the three LEDs, 2 buttons, and so on. And you can program this and read as well, for example, what is the most obvious example, what is the temperature right now in the room at your home. This one was working only with the Bluetooth, but the newer version is, if I remember correctly, already supports Wi-Fi as well. And now I think they have as well the device, which is a half size with some fewer sensors built in, but cheaper because of that as well. So quite nice thing to play with. Any other questions? If not, then thank you very much.
We're out of time anyway, so thank you very much, Vitaliy. And there's actually cake for you as well.
Okay, with some sensors. Okay.